Welcome, everybody. My name is Tommy Soares. I'm Assistant Director of the Purdue Institute of Inflammation, Immunology, and Infectious Disease. And today on Pathfinder, I have the pleasure of welcoming Hannah Rhoades, who is the Senior Manufacturing Scientist in the Department of Technical Services Manufacturing Sciences at Elanco. Welcome to Pathfinder, Hannah. Thank you so much for joining me today. I'm
Thank you.
excited to talk to you. I'm so interested to hear your story. And I know that there are going to be lots of people that are going to be interested in your story too, because it's not your traditional grad school scientist path that we all seem to be very acquainted with, but you've chosen a different route. And I can't wait to hear about this. So thank you and welcome.
Well, thank you, Tommy. I'm really excited to be here. Excited to kind of share my journey to where I am now. So thank you again for having me.
Awesome. Well, so maybe you can take us back to as far as you want to take us back to in your journey and tell us a little bit maybe what your background is and what got you inspired to pursue sciences, or what got you interested in science, and maybe we could go take us through that.
Yeah, so I'll just go all the way back. So I grew up in a small town around Warsaw, Indiana, which is in northern Indiana, if you're not familiar with the area. But I grew up showing horses, actually. So I was very involved in 4-H. So that really was my first introduction to Purdue, because I am a Purdue alum. I also have a lot of family that went there. So it was kind of a given to me that I was going to end up at Purdue. I didn't really know what I wanted to study. I knew I liked science, specifically biology. So I started out, at Purdue, and I decided to do a biochem degree just because I wasn't sure if I wanted to do grad school. And I thought that a chemistry degree would be maybe more applicable to industry right out of college. So I did a biochem degree actually in the biological sciences department. So I started that in 2016. And then my first internship actually was a little bit weird. I worked for Polywood, which is a company in northern Indiana. They recycle plastic and they make it into furniture. So I was a chemical engineering intern for them. That really was my first exposure to manufacturing, and I loved it. I didn't really like the plastics industry. But we did a lot of extrusion and just being out on the floor with operators and solving problems and doing cost savings projects. I knew that was like something I really wanted to do. So that actually helped me get my foot in the door with Elanco for an internship because they saw extrusion on my resume and they were like, "That's so weird. You're a biochem major. Like, what are you doing?" So that helped me there. I also did some undergraduate research at Purdue, studying triple negative breast cancer. So I did a lot of immunostaining and, just some grunt work, bench studies. So that was fun. I didn't really think it was for me, but I loved working with the team in my lab. So I ended up between my junior and senior year doing the internship with Elanco, and I loved it. I was kind of in a joint lab and manufacturing role, so studying our bacterial seed train. So basically I was in the lab just trying to see if I could make this bacteria grow faster with less variability. And then Elanco ended up offering me a full-time position. So I accepted that. I did interview with a few other companies, but I was pretty set on Elanco. They have great benefits and the people there are just fantastic. So many opportunities. So I actually started out as a QC chemist. So I started out there in the lab in 2020. In 2021, I also was doing a QA role. So I was at a very small site out in Terre Haute. We have about 24 employees. So I was doing the QC chemist role and acting as the site QA rep. So that was very interesting. I got to do a bunch of different things, wear a lot of different hats, got a lot of site exposure. And then this January, I actually transitioned into the current role that I'm in, where I'm supporting fermentation as a manufacturing scientist.
Wow, that's wow, my gosh.
Yes.
Quite a trajectory so far, and so exciting though, like so much evolving, but like things coming your way because you did certain things early on that really gave you a leg up. Do you think, and for people that don't know, Warsaw, Indiana is a town you could blink and drive by it and miss it, but it is the orthopedic capital of the world, and I don't think people know that about,
Yes.
there's so many companies there. Do you think growing up though in that environment, there are a lot of scientists and engineers and manufacturers there too? Do you think, did you get exposure to that early on?
Yeah, so my dad actually worked for Depew. So I had a little bit of exposure to the orthopedic side of things. I thought that I didn't like math in high school, which turned out not to be true. So I think that's really what kept me away from the engineering side. If I could go back, I think I might like reconsider that a little bit harder, just because I ended up doing a lot of math anyway with my biochem degree. But being at a smaller high school, I think I had more opportunities than some other smaller high schools because of the area. I mean, we had people come in and talk to our AP Chem class about, Depew, Biomet, those kind of companies. We actually did a tour of the Hollywood facility that I worked at. So, yes, I would say that I definitely had, more opportunities growing up somewhere that has all of this industry in this tiny little town. So,
Yeah, and I mean showing horses too, that must have been quite the escape too, even from that world, right? It must have been like your own connection there with the animals. And tell us a
yeah.
little bit about that.
Yeah, so horses really is what got me into 4-H. So I was a 10-year 4-H member. I went to Purdue vet camp because I thought I might want to be a vet. I think every kid that shows horses kind of goes through that phase. Decided that wasn't for me, but it exposed me to the Purdue campus even more. And it also got me involved in FFA. So I did a lot of the leadership competitions that they have. So speaking, presenting posters, that kind of thing. So yeah, the showing horses for 10 years really kind of brought me to the side of agriculture, which also kind of introduced me to Elanco. So I knew a little bit about them.
Yeah, totally, totally. And do you think that some of the, because showing horses, I think you also have to, it's like a competition, right? And you have to prepare, and I mean, there's nerves around that type of competition too, right? Do you think
Yes.
some of that has helped you? Because I see you, Hannah, as you exude confidence, and it shows in your face that you have this sense that you kind of know what you're good at and what you like and what you don't like, and that gives you confidence. But did some of that come from competing like that at an early age?
Yeah, and I had a trainer that always said, fake it till you make it. So it's okay to not know what you're doing, but just like do your best and eventually you'll know. So I think that definitely helped. It also helped me learn how to get up really early in the morning, going out to do chores. So that has definitely helped me in manufacturing.
Well, so explain, because I think we deserve to hear a little bit more. What's the advantage of waking up early in the morning for you?
Well, one, you get off earlier in the afternoon, usually. So manufacturing, I kind of work like a 7:15 to 4:30 um, schedule. We have 24-hour coverage operations wise. So working that schedule, you can kind of hit multiple shifts. Um, and I don't know, that's just kind of the attitude of manufacturing is just get in early, get started, which I really thrive in that environment. So
And
We have
I
some
mean,
people that don't show up till 8 or 9, so it's flexible, but most people are in early, ready to hit the floor running.
but you think waking up early to go take care of the horses and so on, that was the ethic, the habit that you built from an early age?
Oh yes, yep. I remember being 10, 12, 14 years old out at the barn at 4 in the morning at times. So it
Yeah.
was really fun, but yeah, I think it definitely helped me to establish like a hard work ethic.
So, and you think that helped you during your, your undergrad and your schooling and be successful?
Yeah, I think I had pretty good time management skills in school. I really enjoyed my undergrad, especially when we got to work in teams on projects. That's kind of when I decided, the manufacturing team kind of mentality was something that I would really like just
Yeah.
from what I had experienced in my undergrad. But I really enjoyed my undergrad and I was able to really be on top of things. So I was involved in the Women in Science program
Oh, cool.
on campus. So I definitely recommend to any like women going to Purdue studying science. That's a great program to get involved in. And they really help you. I was a mentor and I really enjoyed that as well.
Oh, awesome. Tell us a little bit about the mentoring that you've done.
Yeah, so I was a mentor in college with women in the Women in Science program. So I believe my sophomore year, I was connected with two freshmen. They're just starting out, kind of figuring out like how do you navigate your study schedule? How do you still have time for extracurriculars? That kind of thing.
Yeah.
So that was really cool. Especially they throw you in there as a sophomore and you're kind of like, I still don't completely know what I'm doing, but I'll go for it. And it actually helps you too. Like you're helping someone else and you're like, oh, I should do this more too. And then at Elanco, I'm actually involved with our internship program. So I am one of the manufacturing quality global intern coordinators.
Mm.
So what that means is all of our manufacturing sites, we have a few interns. The Clinton site has the most interns. We have about 10 to 12 each year. But me and my co-chair, we coordinate all of their activities for the summer.
Oh, wow.
Yes,
That's
it's fun. It can be overwhelming at times, but it's
yeah.
definitely rewarding.
I can imagine though. I mean, that's a lot of managing people and like, okay, time schedules and like things, activities and things that are going to need to bring value to the company, but also bring value to the intern. How do you balance that? I mean, that's pretty difficult.
Yeah, I have a lot of resources at Elanco, whether it's my boss, kind of helping me out, knowing I have these other responsibilities, or like admin assistants that they kind of work side by side with us. And we say, we're trying to plan this event. Can you help with kind of the nitty-gritty details?
Yeah.
But that's kind of the cool thing that I like about Elanco and working in manufacturing is you do have a little bit of free time that you can say, okay, I want to pour my time into this bucket as well.
Mhm.
We also have it's called the Elanco Young Professionals resource group. So I am involved with that as well. And it's just kind of a way to get young people together, talk about our experiences. We have a lot of professional development events,
That's
that kind of
awesome.
thing. So
That's so awesome. And I think for a lot of viewers, they probably and you're educating me by telling me some of this, but I, like many of our viewers, I'm probably never thought that there would be these other types of groups within companies that are helping to create a community and a social fabric, social network. Tell us a little bit about the networking. How has that helped you? Because I mean, you seem to be a very gregarious person, a people's person, right? Like you're
yes, I would definitely say I am a people's person. So I think that gives me a little bit of an advantage when it comes to networking. But Elanco really encourages you to set up one-on-ones. And when you first come in, you make what's called your career map. And it's kind of, you can go all the way out to the next 8 to 10 years. They kind of recommend you only do the next couple just because you have no idea.
Yes.
But you make this career map and then you say, okay, what individuals do I need to talk to, get to this next step? So my current boss, I had been having one-on-ones with him since I started, even though I was in the quality control department. So, I mean, these resource groups is what we call them, but the EYP, the Elanco Young Professionals Network, we have coffee chats with different directors of departments where they come in and they kind of just give you advice, but also you have it in this casual setting where you can ask them questions and you're kind of with a bunch of young people. So it's takes the pressure off of things, which is really great.
That is awesome. And so again, such a great way to create tight units and teams and trust, and there's so much good stuff that comes out of that. I want to go back though to this experience that you had as an intern at Polywood. First, like what made you think, oh, I'm gonna go apply for this internship? Because did you have to apply, or did they invite you to apply? How did that work?
So I had several friends who worked at Polywood in the summers, kind of in their operations in between semesters. And so I was looking at their job board and I was like, oh, they hire interns. And I was like, this would be great. I can live at home for the summer and not have to, pay rent somewhere. And I was reading it and the projects they had listed just sounded really cool. So I applied online with my resume, which wasn't super great other than, I had been a lifeguard. I had worked at an ice cream shop, typical high school summer jobs.
Yeah.
But they ended up interviewing me. So I went in, we had an interview. The chemical engineer that I was working under, he was the one who interviewed me. I brought my transcripts, that kind of thing. And they ended up offering me the position. So
Awesome.
it was a pretty typical route, but it was never something I had imagined, being able to do. I thought I was just going to be applying to do some hard labor over the summer. So it ended up being really cool, a really great opportunity.
And probably like many kids in Indiana, corn detasseling is one of the the ones that you're like, oh, I don't want to do that again.
Avoid
But
at all costs.
that's right. Hard labor out in the sun. But what an opportunity to get and be totally, I mean, the way that you described it before, it seemed like you just found treasure in this opportunity at Hollywood that you had not seen before, you had not even considered. It's like, you learned something that is so new and so exciting to you. Tell us a little bit about that discovery.
Yeah, I mean, it was a great opportunity. I think I still draw some of the experiences that I had at Polywood, even today in my job. So doing plastic extrusion, one of my projects was to do some cost reduction. So they add a blowing agent that creates little air bubbles in their plastic. So basically they wanted me to figure out, how much of this can we use so that we use less plastic, but also that we aren't, compensating to have like less strength in our material.
Yeah.
So I was kind of, doing these, I'll call it a lab. I had these basic, tools to use, but going out and working with manufacturing. But you also have this thing of manufacturing is trying to make all this product that they need to get to the next line of people. And you're just an intern and you're saying, well, I have this project and you've got to convince people that it's important so that they'll spend some of their time doing that with you. And I do that even today, running plant trials where I have to go say, hey, I know we're doing all this important actual work to make money, but what if we do this little science experiment and see if it works?
That's awesome.
So just really learning the people skills of going out and kind of learning to convince people that the work you're doing is important.
Yeah.
That really helped me in that position.
But so this was an internship that you did during your undergrad years?
It was actually just during the summer.
Okay. Of your last year of undergrad?
No, I actually did it after my freshman year,
Oh,
and then
okay.
again after my sophomore year. So
Okay,
I
so
did it
you
for 2
did it
summers.
2 consecutive summers.
Yes.
And this was while you were doing your undergrad, but you also you volunteered to work in a lab at Purdue too and do research in biochemistry?
Yes, so I did research for credit.
Okay.
So yep, that's an option for the biological sciences department. So you can do, I can't remember how many credit hours, but it's a decent amount. I didn't do a ton of credit hours, but I spent, 4 to 6 hours a week in the lab. So
Oh man, I wish I would have had that during my PhD
yeah, and
years.
it was great because I believe it was the end of my, or yeah, end of first semester, my sophomore year. My advisor said, I mean, are you interested in research? And I was like, well, I don't know. And she's like, I think you should give it a shot, just so you know, you can say I checked the box and I either liked it or I didn't.
Yes.
And I just went out and I looked at a bunch of professors' research, and I found a few that I found interesting, and I just sent them emails and I said, hey, I'd be happy to come in and wash dishes if you'll let me come work at the lab and learn a few things. And Dr. Lelevre, sorry, she's French, I'm probably butchering her name, but she actually is in the vet school. So that is who I ended up doing undergrad research with. I didn't have to wash dishes, which was cool. So worked under a graduate student, and it was a really fun experience. It did let me know though that I probably did not want to do a hard science graduate degree.
Oh,
But
so that's interesting too. What a great epiphany. What a great realization. And what's interesting too, Hannah, is that you had that experience while the excitement of the summer experience was in you and bubbling around, for lack of a better term, bubbling around without losing integrity of the plastics, right? But so that must have been quite a contrasting time. Do you remember a little bit what you were going through in the lab as you were realizing, oh, this isn't so much for me?
yeah, yeah. And I think it takes a certain kind of person to be in academia. Academic work can be very frustrating. You're not always working towards this, I wouldn't want to say defined goal, but you're starting from scratch. Like you have really nothing. You're just going off of this idea. And in manufacturing, I feel like I could celebrate more personal wins.
Mm,
I mean, cost savings, projects. I mean, even if I can come out and change something that makes somebody's job easier, that's really like what motivates me.
yeah.
That's what feels like a win to me. So
That is so that's so interesting to hear you say that. And I suspect that you are talking a lot also about the frustrations in biological research, which
mhm.
is sometimes it feels like that, a blank slate of unknown that you're going after. But so then you seem to like the defined limits of the projects and that you could carry them out to completion, and at least even if you could save 1 cent and make somebody's life easier, mission accomplished, right? And
Yes,
there's
yes.
some finality to it, whereas in biological research it seems like we're answering one question and that opens up 10 more questions that we need to go after and answer. So to, that, but that also must have given you the again confidence to say, yeah, this is for me, and
Mhm.
not so much that you think it was helpful that you could compare them and had them so close in your life at that time.
Yeah, and I think working under that graduate student as well, and just kind of seeing their experience and just saying, maybe further down the line when I have a more definitive idea of, maybe I do want to study this specific science concept. This could be for me, but right now, it's not. So
And that's, again, so mature and so important for people to hear you say that, because we've had examples of people that have come on the program where they went, did a little bit of work in industry, figured out what they needed to do, came back to get that PhD or grad, whatever, master's, knowing what answers they needed to get scientifically in order to solve the problem in industry, and they went
yeah,
back to industry. So it's interesting. Are you keeping yourself open to that opportunity?
I am. But I honestly think if I went back to school, I might go more for an MBA or something that is more business minded.
Mhm.
Just because I do love the people aspect. And management is kind of on my career map. So yeah, but I had no idea what you could do in industry with a bachelor's degree. Just because I don't think it's emphasized, at the undergraduate level. And that's one thing that I really have enjoyed, working in recruiting at Elanco, going back to Purdue, IU, Wabash College, to try to recruit young people, is to just say, like, graduate school is not the only path.
Yeah.
If you are unsure about it, try something else. And you can come out of school and work for great pharmaceutical biotech companies, with a bachelor's degree.
I thank you for saying that, and it's the one of the big reasons why I wanted you to be on this Pathfinder and be our Pathfinder, because there are a lot of people that might be in those shoes and that are either undecided, or they think that grad school is the only path forward for me to develop a career as a scientist in a scientific company. But that's not the case, as you're showing us and as you're telling us. um i I'm so curious about this whole extrusion, plastics extrusion, and then how that led you to this internship as a manufacturing scientist at Elanco. How did that work out? And like you said that, and maybe that happened later, that you got offered the offer to come on to Elanco. But tell us a little bit about that time that you shifted from Pollywood to Elanco.
Yeah, so I had on my resume that I worked at Polywood for 2 summers and I worked on extrusion. And then I was at the Ag Career Fair at Purdue, which they have in the fall. And I saw Lenko was there, and I had heard of them before. I knew they were associated with Eli Lilly, and I knew pharmaceuticals was maybe an option for me. So I went over and I started talking to one of the recruiters, and she saw that I had extrusion on my resume. And out at the Clinton facility, we actually do some extrusion for some of our product finishing. I've never personally worked on it, but I am slightly familiar, but she worked on it. So that really piqued her interest of, oh, this biochemist has extrusion on their resume. How strange. So we got to talking, and I think what happened was they had a info session that evening. So I went to that as well, kind of listened to more about Elanco. And then I applied online. They interviewed me on campus, and I actually didn't know at the time, but my interviewers were my current boss's boss, and then the director of another department. So I was kind of glad that I didn't know who they were, because I think I would have been a lot more nervous.
Yes.
But the interview went really well, and they actually offered me the internship in the interview. So
Wow.
that was really cool. And I went. I lived in Terre Haute for the summer and worked at the Clinton site, and I loved it. I had a great mentor, and just our entire intern class. We had so much fun all summer. They really welcomed us in, and they offered me a full-time position the Monday of the industrial roundtable. So I was actually out looking at other positions when I got the phone call from their HR
Oh, wow.
director.
That
And Yes.
That's
So
awesome.
yeah,
The stars aligned for you, Hannah. That's great. That's
yeah.
fantastic. And so here you are, you are applying for this internship. What was the process like? Do you remember the types of questions that they were asking you?
Yeah, so Elanco, at least the manufacturing side, I think they have a pretty unique interviewing process. So they did it at the Career Center at Purdue. So you come in, it was me and the two interviewers, and then they kind of ask you a few questions of like, can you talk about a time that you solved a problem? So that can be something super technical. They give you a piece of paper and they ask you to draw it out. So I actually drew out, the concept of, how using more of this gassing agent in the plastic, could lead to a cost savings. So drawing all the different profiles of the plastic lumber that we produced, that was my technical demonstration. So I actually didn't talk about the biochemical research that I was doing. And then, they asked for a leadership example. So I think that I talked about WISP, the Women in Science program, and just being a mentor and kind of helping a student navigate like preparation for their first college exam. And
Nice.
then what is the other? There was one other big question. Leadership. Oh, they ask about your motivational fit. So a big thing with our manufacturing site is it is in a pretty rural area. Um, we do have, options that you can live in the Indy area, but they want to know that you're okay with living in Indiana. And, I've been in Indiana all my life. I lived in a very rural area, so that was not scary to me at all. But it can be for some people. And I do think you might have a little bit of a benefit to be willing to live in a more rural area. It's harder to get promoted at companies at places like Chicago where, everybody wants to live there. But if you're willing to kind of, live out in a rural area, work for a manufacturing site, and be dedicated, I think you can move up the company pretty quickly.
That's that again, so awesome to hear that and learn that, because I don't think I had considered that. I think, people, this whole work from home type of culture now, people are thinking, well, how can I work from where I want to live?
Hmm.
And I think there's a lot of also attraction of people wanting to live in the peace of a rural side and not
Hmm.
have, neighbors mowing the lawn and so on. It's
Yeah. Yeah. Lower
I
cost of living. I mean, there are
yeah,
there are a lot of benefits to
yeah,
living in Indiana. So
absolutely, absolutely. That's so neat and so awesome to hear that you describing a technical piece that seems to be far-fetched or far away from anything that deals with animal health, that you landed that job.
mhm.
Why extrusion? Explain to us, what is it about Elanco that they like about extrusion, and how do they use extrusion?
Yeah, so I don't know how technical I can get, just because that isn't a process I've ever worked on.
Sure.
But basically, what they do is one of our dry products. They use extrusion to form a pellet that
Mhm.
then they grind down, and that basically just helps us to get a homogeneous product that has the API mixed evenly throughout. Um,
That's
so,
awesome. So
so
cool,
yeah.
so cool. So yeah, I mean, there's so many practical applications, right? And we don't realize it, but to make a pellet, we first make the snake out of the dough, and
Yes.
then we chop it up into little pieces that we call the pellets, right? And so the snake comes out of an extrusion process that again, it's so wonderful to like see how the different manufacturing worlds are really
Yeah.
tied,
And I
and
mean, they use extrusion to make pasta, like just things you'd never think of. But yeah,
exactly.
I definitely would, recommend to students that are like, maybe I want to do, manufacturing, something in industry. You can get an internship at a company that maybe isn't necessarily, if you want to end up in pharmaceuticals, if you maybe don't get an internship in pharmaceuticals, you can try these other options and kind of just get your feet wet. A lot of manufacturing is working with people, and that's going to be similar, regardless on the industry.
Yeah, absolutely. And so tell us a little bit about the people that you've worked with. And it sounds like you've had also some people that have helped you along the way of giving you some good advice. Tell us a little bit about these mentors.
Yeah, yeah. So when I first started out, I was in the lab at the Terre Haute facility. So it was me, our lab manager, and then 3 lab technicians. And we were actually all women, which I thought was really cool because you always hear, this gap in the ratio of men to women in industry. So I was like, well, here you go. This is going to be great. So our lab manager at the time, she had been with Elanco for 10 years, and she was really great. Starting out, I was pretty nervous coming in, especially being at a smaller site. I was the only chemist on the site, so I pretty much walked in, had 2 weeks of training, and then it was my responsibility. So she was really helpful in saying, like, it's okay to not know. This is how you ask for help, because it kind of sounds easy to, if I don't know, I just ask for help, but it can be a complex thing of, who do I ask? How do I ask? Um, if you don't know, sometimes you don't even know what all you don't know. So she was really helpful in that and helping me be confident in being able to say, I don't know. It's not because, I'm incompetent. It's just because I've never experienced this issue before. And I think that's one thing coming out of college is, you think, okay, I have to have the right answer because, we're used to taking exams and there being a right answer. Well, in the real world, maybe there's 10 right answers and maybe one of them is a little bit better. But maybe that one isn't feasible because it's too expensive or requires too many people. So you kind of have to just go with your gut instinct and adapt as you go. Um,
That
but really, I've had, sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead. Please, I didn't want to interrupt you. Go ahead.
But I think working in industry is really great because you can have mentors that are all over. I have mentors that are in our external network. So I've never actually met them in person. We've only met over Teams calls. I have mentors that are in HR. So, they're totally detached from the technical side of Elanco, but they've really helped me with, how do I navigate personal relationships within my work, and how do I, communicate better, that kind of thing. And then just supervision has been really great in saying, okay, well, where do you want to go next? And what do we need to do so that you're ready for that next step?
Mhm. It sounds like there's for a lot of the people that we speak to, I know from Elanco's side and from a few other companies, is that there's a great support network for people that work there. It's not just, they're going to hire you and it's make it or break it.
Yes.
They don't let you fail, and they let you fall forward. A lot of from what I'm hearing from you, it's like you have a diverse set of group of people that are all helping you to succeed. Is that right? Do I have that right?
Yeah, and I would definitely say it's a team mentality. So especially in manufacturing, you have what's called your process team. So I support fermentation, so I'm on the fermentation process team, and that consists of engineers and operations, and our supervision, maintenance that works on the equipment, IT that helps with the automation systems. So it's this cross-functional group that if you don't know something, you have so many resources of people to go to, and you can go to more than one person. They're all going to have different, views on how to fix it. But it'll really help you get to the root of the problem,
Yeah.
for finding a solution.
And so do you feel that you've kind of adopted that culture that philosophy for your interns, for, you know, you like the people that are working with you and the people that you're mentoring as well?
Yeah, and I'm actually going to have my first intern this summer. So I'm very excited. She's from Purdue. So
Awesome.
it's going to be great. But what we really try to do is bring those interns into the process team. So they're working on a project that's kind of associated with one specific thing. But we say, okay, well, the day to day, you're going to come to huddles, which is what we call our morning meetings, where we kind of go through the rundown of everything that's going on. So really just looping them in so that they kind of get a feel of what it would be like if they worked for us full time. And that's kind of, I think, what I really liked about being an intern at Elanco was I had a pretty good idea when I left of what it would be like if I was a full-time employee.
Yeah. Yeah. That's again, that's so revealing about the culture inside the company, you know, and how employees are treated. I want to take you back, if we can,
Mhm.
to your time doing the global manufacturing and uh, quality control. What was it about that attracted you, and that you said, hey, you know, this is something I like as well? And or take us a little bit through what it was all about.
Sorry, for which the
So the QA QC,
oh, okay, my
yeah,
first role at Elanco.
yeah,
Yeah, so when I started as a QC chemist, I was a little worried because I was an intern in the department that I'm currently in. So I didn't have a whole lot of quality control experience. But I was supporting an enzyme product, which we were doing colorimetric assays,
yeah,
enzyme assays, which I was like, I understand this from my undergrad. This is great. But
yes,
one learning curve I had was we did all these assays on a robot. So this TCAN robot, this
yeah,
was I came in and I had to learn, how do I troubleshoot this? And,
yeah,
automation is great until it's not. So that was probably the biggest learning curve, but I ended up really enjoying that. And I got to work on several different, robotic automation systems in the lab then throughout the 2 years that I was in quality control. And then, so that was for the QC portion. And then I had the opportunity to kind of do the QC role along with our site quality assurance role. So I was, supporting our lab process and then also supporting the operations side from a quality assurance perspective. So doing batch release. So each batch that is produced, we fill out a ticket and it has everything about that batch. And then quality assurance kind of, releases it saying, we approve this product, it's good to go to the customer.
I see.
Um, so it was a lot of responsibility. I only did that for about 6 months because I was basically doing two people's jobs while they were backfilling the position. But it really allowed me to kind of demonstrate my strengths and show that I was capable of doing all of these things and managing these things. And I had so many people supporting me, doing kind of the sideline things that I had done as a chemist that I couldn't do because I was also doing this other role. So it was definitely overwhelming at times, but I think it was a time of really maturing for me as a young professional. So I'm really glad I was able to do it, even if it was pretty challenging.
What do you think was the biggest factor that like made you mature? Was it the stress? Was it the time? Was it the effort? What was it?
I think it was mostly the time management and the people management. So the QA position was actually done by the lab manager. So we went from having a lab manager to no lab manager. And so I wasn't managing these people, but we had to all work together to figure out how we got all these things done. So kind of this influencing without authority, having all of these different personalities, all of these different work ethic types, and you have to work with that. And everybody has strengths and weaknesses, and just kind of trying to pull all the strengths together. That really, I think, was what really matured me is just seeing all of that try to come together.
That's and so that must have had a huge impact on your communication skills too, and how your interpersonal skills with these people, right? And
Oh, yes.
tell us a little bit about that. What are some good tips and techniques that we should
Yeah.
know about?
So, I mean, we do this kind of personality test called Insights at Elanco, and they kind of give you like a color system. So, if you're really analytical, you're blue. If you're kind of direct and straightforward, you're red. And I'm red. So and blue. So I want you to tell me the details, and I want you to tell me now. But some people, if they aren't direct at all, and you kind of have to navigate that, because if you come and say something like super direct to them, they might take it personally, and then you have like kind of this wall between you. So you
Yeah.
have to navigate, you have your people that they just want you to come in, tell them what needs done, and leave. But you also have these people who want you to come in and kind of like foster a relationship with them, say, how is your day going, and kind
Yes.
of go through this of like, I see you as a person, and then let's talk about work. So kind of learning how to, you know take a quick scan of a person and figure out, okay, what do I need to do to communicate with you effectively?
Yeah.
And I think that role really helped me with that.
I like that. And it's called Insights. Is that just
Yes.
something that's available for you guys? Or, I mean,
No, it's a third party that
okay,
does that. So yeah,
that's
I
interesting.
definitely recommend it.
It sounds so interesting because again, I think people don't realize that, yeah, we're all kind of the same, but we're really different in our styles, in our perspectives, in our experiences, our past lives, the baggage that we're carrying around, and how we interact with people. And that there are different types of people, and that are good at the different things that you might not be good at, right? Like,
Yeah.
and how to work with them, and what tasks do people have. I love that aspect, and
Yeah.
I think there are a few of those going around, but I had not heard of Insights. That's a good tip. And I think for people in a lab in general, even in academia, it's great to have
Yes.
that, right?
Yeah, and it's great to know, people on your team, we kind of joke like, oh, get to the point, Hannah's red. Like, so a lot
Yeah.
of people have color blocks on their desk with all their colors, but
Oh,
it's
wow.
great because you get this whole kind of printout of like what are your potential strengths and weaknesses. And
Uh-huh.
reading that, I was like, oh yeah, that's pretty spot on. So it kind of gives you a breakdown of like things you can do and things you can work on.
So, and does it give you also a printout saying, if you're going to be talking to a blue person, you should approach it this way or that way?
It
It's a,
does give you a breakdown of how the different colors react or interact with each other.
okay.
So that's kind of interesting
That's
too.
awesome. That's
Yeah.
so cool. And I guess, like the whole people aspect is something that, as you've spoken to me today, is something that I it resonates with me, because again, you have this confidence about the success that you've had in your career trajectory so far, but the people elements, and as we said, you're a people person, and that I think that aspect is also important to highlight, and maybe spotlight the fact that it does take a village many times, right? To for your own personal improvement and personal progress, right?
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. And I've had, supervisors who have said, Hannah, you're very direct. So you need to maybe, be more yellow, which is, the social butterfly, and kind of take this to the group in a more diluted way. Because I have a mentality of like, oh, if we get this done right, it's great for the team, but not everybody absorbs it that way. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's great to talk to managers that have kind of, dealt with people for a significant amount of time. And they can just give you advice that you've never even considered, like, oh, I never even thought to frame it that way. And that somebody might think of it a completely different way.
Well, and I think you've done that with me today. You've given me a lot of different perspectives and things to think about, and it's great. I love it. I think if we can learn something new every day, is we're doing our job as humans, as long as we can put it to good practice, right?
Yeah.
Um, so tell us now, what's your day to day like? And as senior manufacturing scientist, are you at the lab? Are you at the manufacturing site? What, like, how are you balancing? What's your day to day?
Yeah, so I am fully at the manufacturing site. So I am mostly at like a desk job type of situation. But first thing I do when I go in is I pull all the lab results from the day before, kind of compile those, and then I go to my first meeting, which is our process team huddle. Um, so we go through, we kind of have a green and red system. So if things are green or good, we say green, and if they're bad, we say red. We always hope for more green than red, but it's manufacturing, so you never know. And then we do our huddle, talk about any issues that might have happened the night before when we weren't on site. And then that kind of plans the trajectory of my day. If there are issues, it's kind of my job to mitigate those. So whether that's writing a deviation or doing an investigation. But if everything's going smoothly, I'm just doing a lot of data digging. So each batch that's harvested, I'm doing a yield on that to see how much product do we get from this. And then kind of putting that in my huge data file, doing JMP analysis, that kind of thing. I also put together a lot of presentations to present to management about how things are running. And then I run plant trials. So whether that's like modifying things in the process or using different materials. So writing protocols to actually execute those, or writing reports of the results. But that's kind of the day to day,
Awesome.
along with my intern coordinator position. So working to plan those events. I'm involved with recruiting. So I'm the Purdue point captain. We try to have, an alumni kind of be the point captain for that. So planning events to come on campus,
Awesome.
interacting with students.
Oh, wow. We got to talk about that for sure.
Yes.
Definitely. But, and so if there were people that would be interested in, having, doing an internship or so on, where do they go?
So we have all of our job postings on Workday, but I definitely would say, I mean, we're living in a time of social media. Leverage your LinkedIn network. I mean, people can feel free to send me a message on LinkedIn, and I'll point them in the right direction. But
Awesome.
yeah, connecting with hiring managers on LinkedIn if you're looking for a full-time position.
Yeah.
But yeah,
And
it's
I wanted to ask you, because you described your day to day so well, and I thought it was important for people to hear that question about where to go. But I did want to ask you, what's your favorite thing that you're doing today?
so I really like when it's gonna sound weird because I'm gonna say I really like when we have a problem. It's not that I like that we're having a problem, but I really like when we solve a problem as a team. So for an example, we had an automation change that fermenter was feeding out of two valves at the wrong time. And that might sound like a simple problem, but at first we didn't know what was going on. So I was working with automation engineers, our process engineers, my advisor, to look at the data and kind of figure out what was going on, because we knew something was wrong, and just coming to that conclusion of, oh, this is it, and then fixing it. I think that's the most rewarding part of my day. It's just kind of that relief of, oh, we figured it out.
Well, and it speaks a lot about you too, and that throughout this conversation, you've told me about every challenge that you ran towards to try to, even prove it to yourself, right? That you can
Yes.
do it. So it's not surprising that the challenge of solving a problem is what's exciting for you and what motivates you. what's the right type of scientist for manufacturing sciences, if we can? I mean, you started off in a very different area, and you ended up in manufacturing and loving it. So
Yeah.
really, is there a right type of scientist or the right type of person?
I think, if you have an engineering background, you're going to have a little bit of a leg up starting out because you're going to kind of understand, the equipment functioning side of things that you don't really get if you go into just a hard science. But I think that's something people can learn. I think that if you have a strong chemistry background, and you like digging into data, I don't think it necessarily matters, what you studied in your undergrad. It's just if you have kind of that grit of, okay, there's a problem and I'm going to dig into it until I find it. That's the kind of scientists we need. So whether you studied biology, chemistry, or physics, I don't think it really matters. Really, what I look for when I'm recruiting students is, okay, did you demonstrate to me that you're going to be a hard worker and you have the capacity to learn? That's really what I look for.
And no, and it's so important, right? As you progress. Um, I also wanted to mention that when you were saying, well, I could see myself going towards an MBA or going that route, and your affinity for mathematics that you found out that you like so much. Is that a route also that's available to you to go and do an MBA that might be, either within the company or some executive MBA program, something like that?
Yeah, I know Elanco does have programs where they'll reimburse you for portions of a graduate degree. I'm not sure exactly on the details of that, but I know I could definitely do like a part-time MBA where you're doing it in the evenings or on the weekends. I think Elanco too, if you say, okay, I'm going to take like a sabbatical to go do a graduate degree, they probably would welcome you back. I don't know fully the details of how that would go as well. Um, but yeah, I think probably a part-time MBA would be what I would be
Yeah.
interested in. But I really would like to have more technical expertise,
Mm,
under my belt, just because I think some of the best leaders I have worked with, that they are really business savvy. They
yeah.
also have a deep technical background that they can reference, when their employees run into an issue, that they can kind of, they can't solve the issue for you, but they can kind of push you in the right direction.
Yeah. Yeah. And also, um, the different perspective, right, that they bring to the table is always refreshing. Uh,
Yes.
uh, Hannah, I've covered so much with you today. I wonder, are there any questions that I didn't ask you that you want to answer, that anything you want to tell us as we finish and conclude this interview?
No, I mean, I think, the only advice that I could give to, college students is really dig into, what opportunities there are, because there are things that you never have even imagined. There are jobs that don't even exist yet that are going to exist, that you might love. And just reach out to people. I mean, use LinkedIn. If you see somebody that has a job that you're like, oh, that's weird, I've never heard of that, reach out to them, hop on a phone call, ask them about it, because you're not just stuck in this narrow, path. There's just so many opportunities. So
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you. Thank you so much, Hannah Rhodes. It's been a pleasure talking to you today. Senior manufacturing scientist at Elanco, and you're really not at Greenfield, and you're really not in Indianapolis. Tell us again where you are located.
I am out at the Clinton, Indiana manufacturing site.
Awesome, awesome.
Yes.
Well,
Thank you so much, Tommy. This has been
thank
really
you.
fun.
So cool. So cool. So great to talk to you and so great to meet you. Thank you for doing this. And I hope you have a great afternoon.
Thank you, you too.
Thanks.